May I proceed, Sarah?
Yes, we are live over YouTube.
Very well. This is a regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Orleans. Present are myself, Michael P. Marnick, the chair. Also present are members Lynette Colt, George Waugh, Gerald Mulligan, Matthew Cole, and Bruce Todd, constituting a quorum. Also in attendance are the building commissioner of the Town of Orleans, Thomas Evers, and the board secretary, Stacy Faber. Assisting us is Sarah Eaton, who provides technical support for virtual meetings, such as this one. This would probably be the 10th, pretty close to almost the 11th month of virtual meetings. Tonight's business was duly noticed, and the first case is that of 2145. Well, this was previously heard on in part on January 6, 2021, presented by David Little, and on January 19th, he submitted a letter to me as the board chair, circulated then to the board members, requesting to withdraw this special permit application without prejudice. I informed him that I would present it to the board for allowance. Is there any comment? Mr. Little is didn't say he would be present, nor did I dissuade him from being present. This is generally a routine procedure. Not always, but usually. What is the sense of the board? I will move that the request to withdraw the application without prejudice be allowed.
Second.
Second by Ms. Eckholt. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'm in favor of the proposal. I will say, however, that I wish Mr. Little had the opportunity or chose to represent the case with the comments that were made by the abutters. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh. The board's ignorant of what happened, what transpired once we closed the hearing. So therefore, that the motion carried unanimously, and the case number 2145 is now withdrawn. Next on the agenda is the application of Cape Cod Healthcare. This happens to be case number 2147, first time in front of this board. And Ms. Cox, first time you've been here too, if I recall. I don't remember seeing you. Welcome.
I think that's right. Thank you.
Well, I think you'll probably present for Cape Cod Healthcare. This application for a special permit is set forth in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6, Section 164-13, Use Table, Footnote 4, medical office use consisting of more than 2,500 square feet of floor area, and also Section 154-3C2, which would be reconstruction of a non-conforming structure other than single or two-family structure to allow relief from pre-existing non-conforming water requirements contained in several sections. First, Section 164-34A1, parking setback to building. Second, 164-34A3, 10-foot landscape buffer. 3, 164-34C5, interior parking lot plantings. 4, 164-34D1, side lot screening. And 5, 164-34D2, front yard landscaping to right of way. This application also applies for petition variance as set forth in Chapter 40A, Section 10, particular land or structures being filed in the alternative to the special permit relief from specified landscape and buffer requirements. The reference sections are the same sections previously recited for a special permit. This property is located at 42 Route 6A, map 26, parcel number 37. This is the supporting materials are not necessarily voluminous, but they're large. And this is a good example of how much we miss having our hearings in escape room, when we can move around and point and use different devices, and you can all see what we're, everyone will know what we're all talking about. Now, Ms. Cox, the way you've structured this is that there are two special permit. You're looking for two special permits or relief under one special permit for reasons. Part of it is the dimensional landscaping. And the first is the use. You have submitted a summary, which is, I think most or all of the members of the board have reviewed, and I'll leave it to you to present as you wish.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Eliza Cox. I'm an attorney with Mutter, McLennan and Fish in Hyannis, and I'm here this evening on behalf of Cape Cod Healthcare. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Like you, I find these Zoom hearings more difficult, so I'm going to show slides during the course of my comments and try and orient you and the public to the project that's proposed. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's hope this works. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Yes.
Super. So just by way of introduction, there are some of our team members who are in the attendee list. They include from Cape Cod Healthcare, Michael Bockstein, who's the Vice President of Facilities Management. And then our consultant team is also present this evening. And that includes Greg Sarunian from MedCom Architectural Group, who's the project architect. Dan Ojala from Down Cape Engineering, the civil engineer on the project. Randy Hart from VHB, who's the transportation engineer, and myself. I'm gonna handle the presentation, but if you have any questions, our consultant team is here this evening. So just by way of background on Cape Cod Healthcare, which is the applicant in this matter, Cape Cod Healthcare has the property that's the subject of this application under agreement with the current property owner, which is the Route 6A Real Estate Trust. As the chair mentioned in his opening comments, we did submit materials in support of this application, including in Exhibit A, a letter from the property owner confirming that Cape Cod Healthcare has standing to make this application on behalf of this property. So just by way of background on Cape Cod Healthcare, it's the region's healthcare provider for visitors and residents. It's a nonprofit organization. It has over 450 physicians, over 5,300 employees, and 790 volunteers. It owns and operates 2 community hospitals, Cape Cod Hospital in Hyannis and Falmouth Hospital in Falmouth, and 4 urgent care centers, the closest one to Orleans being in Harwich. The hospital also has Cape Cod Healthcare also has a Cape-wide network of primary and specialty care facilities. There are some in Orleans. It also has a home health care service through the Visiting Nurses Association of Cape Cod. It owns a hospice care through the Visiting Nursing Association of Cape Cod Hospice. It has several skilled nursing, assisted living, and rehabilitation services, and it owns a laboratory services. In Orleans, there are existing Cape Cod Healthcare facilities. They're listed on the screen. And as I mentioned, the closest urgent care facility to Orleans is the Fontaine Outpatient Center in Harwich. So this is an aerial of the subject property, 42 Route 6A. It's right here. The property contains about 41,270 square feet. It has 130 feet of frontage on Route 6A. To the west, the property abuts a right-of-way, which is part of the abutting Stop and Shop Plaza. And I'll have a site plan that shows the property boundaries in just a moment, but the right-of-way is essentially where these cars are parked, and then it flares out to include this dirt area. The subject property does have deeded rights in the right-of-way, and the deed provides that the rights include for the property to use it for, in common with others, for purposes for which ways are used in the town of Orleans, including the right to install and maintain utilities. The property is irregularly shaped. You'll see that again when I have the site plan up, but it's relatively long and narrow, and then it has a piece that sort of juts out in this location, which is part of the subject property. There is a pretty substantial change in grade on the property. So from basically where the existing building is down to this low area that's part of the property, it's over a 10-foot drop in grade between the two portions of the site. The property is located in the general business, the GB zoning district, and this portion of the property is located in the floodplain district. The property is developed with an existing structure that's about 6,700 square feet. It's the former Lobster Claw restaurant. The site has 2 wide curb cuts presently, about 76 parking spaces, including a double row of parking on Route 6A, which you can see in this photograph. There is extensive paving on the site, and it is lacking in stormwater controls. Here's an existing conditions site plan, and again, to sort of orient you to the unique shape of the property, the boundaries of the property go like this. Well, you're seeing my cursor, bump here, and then back out onto Route 6A. The site in its existing condition has numerous zoning nonconformities. There's a side yard setback nonconformity right about here of 5.7 feet. The site exceeds the bylaws impervious coverage limitation of 75% at approximately 77%. The site is non-conforming to virtually all of the landscape buffer requirements contained in section 164-34. It's non-conforming to the width of the curb cuts, and it's also non-conforming in that it is a restaurant use in excess of 2,500 square feet without the benefit of a special permit. Now, in terms of the proposed redevelopment, Cape Cod Healthcare is proposing to remove the existing structure and construct a 1.5-story medical office facility consisting of approximately 6,800 square feet. So it's almost the same square footage as the existing. The location of the proposed building is shown in sort of this orangey color on this plan that you're seeing. The proposed uses within the medical facility include primary care, an urgent walk-in care, and the potential for specialty care. The facility, and I'll show you a floor plan in just a moment, but the facility will contain 12 exam rooms, together with waiting areas and support spaces. There are 42 parking spaces that are proposed in compliance with the bylaws requirements. Now, with respect to the layout of the site, the goal of the design team in looking at this uniquely shaped site was to meet the needs of Cape Cod Healthcare, and also at the same time in laying out the site, the goal was to eliminate and or improve on the existing nonconformities that exist on the property, to enhance the streetscape along Route 6A, to improve the access and egress, and also to improve the environmental conditions on the site. So in that respect, importantly, the redevelopment will bring the proposed building into compliance with all of the building setback requirements of the bylaw. It will exchange pavement for green space to bring the site into compliance with the maximum impervious coverage limitation of the bylaw. So as I mentioned previously, the existing condition is about 77% impervious. The proposed condition will be 69.4% impervious, thereby complying with the bylaw's 75% limitation. In terms of safety, another aspect of the redevelopment, an important one, is improving vehicular and pedestrian safety by removing the wide curb cuts that exist on 6A and replacing it with a single curb cut that's appropriately sized coming in and out of the property. As part of this design and working closely with the site plan review committee, the proposed curb cut allows for a full access entrance, so you can turn right into the site or left into the site, but is designed for right out only. And to achieve this, the project includes pavement markings directing right out only, signage directing right out only, and a rumble directional island in the curb cut, again, directing a right out only. Ultimately, then this is a state highway, so the Mass Department of Transportation will need to review and approve the curb cut. But the design was modified during the course of our site plan review process here in Orleans. And based on discussions that we had with the fire department, which also had commented early on regarding the access, the fire department is willing to write a letter of support to Mass DOT for this configuration. And so we're hopeful that we can get it approved as proposed through Mass DOT. In addition, pedestrian walkways have been incorporated into the site to allow for safe passage from the parking areas to the building and then out to the existing sidewalk on Route 6. So there's a sidewalk that's proposed all along this parking area, has sort of a crosswalk across the drive aisle connecting to another sidewalk along the building, and then there's another sidewalk coming from by the canopy down alongside the drive aisle and out onto Route 6A. In addition to the physical site improvements, the proposed change of use will also improve vehicular safety by substantially decreasing the number of daily trips that are entering and exiting the property. One of the attachments to the memo that we submitted was a transportation memorandum from our transportation engineer who's participating in this call. It's Exhibit D to our memorandum. And as is detailed in that memorandum, the proposed change of use will result in 344 fewer daily trips, 444 fewer Saturday trips. And then in terms of the peak hour, there will be a slight increase in the morning peak hour trips, a 15 trip increase, but a more substantial decrease in the PM peak hour, a 31 trip decrease, and a decrease of 44 trips during the Saturday peak hour. In terms of environmental improvements, there are many. Changing from the 260-seat former restaurant to the medical office use will substantially decrease the wastewater that will be generated from the site. So under current conditions with the former restaurant, it generated about 9,100 gallons per day of wastewater. And with proposed conditions for the medical office, it will be about 1,250 gallons per day, so a significant decrease. As part of the redevelopment, the hospital will be removing the cesspools that exist on the site and installing on an interim basis a fully compliant Title V system. We did have to get some relief from one of the local requirements under the Board of Health, and we did obtain that relief from the Orleans Board of Health, but it meets all of the state requirements under Title V. The septic system is, as I mentioned, proposed to be in place on an interim basis because sewer is coming right in front of this building. And the project will connect to sewer once it is available. And in fact, having it connect to sewer once sewer is available is a condition of both the Board of Health approval that we received, as well as of the Conservation Commission approval that we received. In addition, the project proposes new stormwater management infrastructure including catch basins and a rain garden, which rain garden is right here. The stormwater design meets the state's requirements for redevelopment, including TSS, total suspended solid removal, direct infiltration of the clean roof runoff, and a rain garden, which will reduce nitrogen and phosphorus. It's also a significant improvement over the existing conditions. This graphic shows the proposed floor plan, just to kind of orient, and then the signage to orient you. Route 6A would be here. Here's the canopy. The blue areas that are shown on this graphic are the areas that are proposed for the primary care. The green areas are the areas that are proposed for the urgent care component. The yellow is sort of the circulation and waiting areas. And then the pinker area are shared space. And this graphic shows the proposed elevations, the street side. So the side facing 6A is here. This graphic shows the side as you were driving up the driveway. This is the side elevation that would face like Nauset Fish Market. And then this is the back elevation that would face the parking area. We've worked very carefully on these design plans and modified them during the course of the local review. The project has been reviewed and unanimously approved by the Architectural Review Committee. And as I mentioned, during the course of that review, changes were made to break down any sense of massing, to add more detail to the building, to modify roof lines and change the building materials, which are cedar shingles. If you have any questions on that, I can certainly at the appropriate time bring in our project architect. And this graphic shows a rendered perspective of the building on the site. You'll see the big green area. It's about a 25-foot landscape setback along the front in place of the existing double row of parking. So in terms of the proposed improvements, the redevelopment will comply, as I mentioned, with all building setback requirements, and in doing so, eliminates an existing nonconformity. It will comply with the maximum impervious coverage requirements of the bylaw, and also in doing so, eliminates an existing nonconformity. It improves vehicular and pedestrian safety. It substantially decreases the daily trips, which I went through a few minutes ago, and results in improved environmental protection. In addition, the redevelopment will substantially improve the streetscape along Route 6A with the 25-foot landscape buffer along Route 6A. The building design is an attractive one that's consistent with the bylaw's design objectives, and the project proposes new dark sky compliant lighting. So in terms of the permitting, we've gone through many of the boards already in Orleans. We've gone through site plan review and the project has been approved. We've gone through a preliminary and final architectural review and the project was approved. We filed with the Conservation Commission because there is some work within a buffer zone to a wetland, as well as land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions approving the project. We have appeared before the Board of Health, which has also approved the project. We're here tonight before you, the zoning board, so that's in process. And then the last permit that we'll need to receive after hopefully successfully completing zoning is Mass DOT for the curb cut. So getting to the relief that was requested, as the chair indicated, we filed for 2 special permits. One is pursuant to section 164.13 footnote 4 for the commercial use, the change of use in excess of 2,500 square feet. And then the second one is pursuant to section 164.3C2 for the reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming structure. We have filed in the alternative from the buffer requirements that are contained in section 164.34 of the bylaw. However, if this second special permit, the reconstruction of the non-conforming structure special permit, is granted, our intention would be to seek to withdraw that variance request without prejudice. So I'm going to turn to the special permits. So the first special permit is the special permit for the use in excess of 2,500 square feet. The bylaw refers that special permit to section 16438 of the bylaw, which contains the commercial regulation requirements for a special permit and contains criteria for the board to consider in granting the special permit. The first is the location. And we suggest that this project is consistent with that criteria. It's located in the GB district, which allows a wide range of commercial uses. The use is compatible with the existing uses and also consistent with the criteria in the bylaw. The project will result in environmental enhancements, which I described a few minutes ago. The second criteria is activity type and mix. Again, this project meets those requirements. It adds a diversity of services to the town. It is open year-round. And it also results in, as I mentioned earlier, a substantial reduction in daily traffic volumes as compared to the pre-existing use. The next criteria is site design. The redevelop will substantially improve the streetscape and aesthetic along Route 6A by providing a landscaped buffer in place of the parking. It improves pedestrian and vehicular safety with both physical improvements as well as a reduction in the overall number of trips coming in and out of the site on a daily basis. And it minimizes the visibility of the parking areas by locating the parking from instead of the front of the building to the back of the building, consistent with your zoning bylaw. And lastly, in terms of facility design, the project improves, as I mentioned, views into the property from the public way, and the overall architectural design minimizes massing, uses materials that are consistent with what the bylaw requires and what's within the town, and as I mentioned, was approved by the Architectural Review Committee. Therefore, with respect to the first special permit, we suggest that after consideration, of the criteria that are contained in section 16438, that the proposal's benefits outweigh any adverse effects, which is essentially the standard for granting the special permit. So I'll move on, I guess, to the second special permit, unless you want me to pause at this point. Okay.
No, you may proceed,
I'll continue on.
please.
So the second special permit that we're seeking is a special permit to allow for reconstruction of the existing non-conforming structure pursuant to 164.3C2. That section of the bylaw allows for alteration, reconstruction, extensions of non-conforming structures. And the standard is in granting that special permit that it not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure. And as I'll go through in just a moment, we suggest the redevelopment satisfies the criteria here. So the non-conformity that will be retained with the redevelopment site pertains to certain buffer requirements. And I'll just quickly walk through them and show how they are either being improved or remaining the same as compared to the existing conditions. So the first section is 164.34A1, which requires a 10-foot buffer between the building and driveways and drive aisles. And the existing condition, it's hard to see, but you can see it on this aerial, is non-conforming to this requirement. You have paved parking spaces that either directly abut the building or are within about 1 feet of the building. Under proposed conditions, the site is becoming more conforming. We will meet this requirement along the frontage by having this landscaped buffer. The site complies on this side as you come up the drive aisle. And with respect to the back of the building, there are several handicap parking spaces located here, which under state law are exempt from setback requirements. And so really it's these two parking spaces where my cursor is located that are closer than 10 feet to the main facade of the building. In fact, they're about 8 feet from the main facade of the building. There is, it's hard to see on this graphic, but a vegetated row right here up against the building, and then a sidewalk between the parking spaces and the building facade. So as it relates to this nonconformity, it is being improved as compared to the existing conditions. The second buffer nonconformity is 164-34A3, which requires a 10-foot parking and drive aisle, which is supposed to be a green space setback to any street line. Here, the existing site is non-conforming. The existing layout contains parking and drive aisles in the setbacks along, sorry, wrong graphic, along this side of the property line. There's no setback here. It's about 9.5 feet from the back of the existing parking to the property line in this area. It does comply along this portion of the property, and then it's about 0 feet along here on the property. With respect,
of course, that's where you have the easement.
What's that?
That's where you have the easement.
The easement is, it's kind of confusing because there's different graphics. The easement is actually on this side.
Yeah.
So yes, and you're right, there is no buffer that's proposed up against, that's existing or proposed up against the easement.
Okay.
So under proposed conditions, we are making the site more conforming to this requirement. Along the Route 6A frontage, right here, this was non-conforming. This area under proposed conditions will be fully conforming. Along the right-of-way property line, there is no change, so it will remain non-conforming to the buffer requirements along the right-of-way. We will bring this back area into full compliance with that 10-foot buffer requirement. The parking along this side, which is, I guess, like the easterly side of the building, that will comply with the 10-foot requirement. And then here in the back of the portion of the property that sort of juts out, we're going from 0 feet existing to about 2 feet proposed of buffer. So it will become more conforming. So on balance, we're cleaning up some non-conformities, particularly the important ones, I think, along the front, retaining the existing non-conformity along the right-of-way, improving this non-conformity and eliminating the non-conformity in the back, and then improving the buffer non-conformity in this location on the property. The next buffer non-conformity pertains to interior parking lot plantings. The existing site is non-conforming. There are 76 parking spaces existing with no interior parking lot tree plantings. Under proposed conditions, this property will become more conforming, although still non-conforming. We are proposing to plant trees along this property line within 5 feet of the parking areas, which are included as landscape trees under the bylaw. And then including in this rain garden, which is also interior to the parking lot, a tree and a rain garden. So it's still non-conforming, but it's more conforming with these plantings, with this rain garden, and with the reduction in the number of parking spaces and the reduction in the amount of pavement. The next buffer non-conformity is section 164-34D1, which requires a 4-foot side lot line landscape screening of parking areas. The existing site is, again, non-conforming where it abuts the right-of-way here and in this area back here. Under proposed conditions, we are becoming more conforming. The buffer along the right-of-way is staying the same, except for where the rain garden is proposed. And then we're slightly increasing the buffer in this area from 0 feet to 2 feet. Finally, the last buffer nonconformity is section 164-34D2, which requires a 6-foot front yard landscaping setback. The existing site is non-conforming on the street frontage here on Route 6A. The proposed condition will be fully conforming and therefore eliminate that existing non-conformity. We did carry that relief forward, though, to the extent that this right-of-way is considered a front yard, in which case we're maintaining the existing non-conformity and/or slightly improving it with the rain garden. So those are the buffer nonconformities. With respect to the special permit request, we also just finally suggest that the project meets compliance with the general special permit criteria contained in 16444C, which has a list of criteria that I'll walk through very briefly. I think I've covered much of this already. The first is the adequacy of the size of the site, and we suggest it's adequate. It's about 41,000 square feet. The redevelopment complies with the impervious coverage requirements of the bylaw and also complies with the floor area ratio requirement, with just a 16.5% floor area ratio requirement where 40% is allowed. So we suggest the size is adequate. In addition, the next criteria, we suggest the site is suitable for the use, it's appropriately zoned, and the use complements the surrounding retail, restaurant, and service uses. The next criteria pertains to traffic flow and safety. As we've discussed, there is a substantial decrease in the amount of daily trips coming in and out of the site, together with pedestrian safety measures with the sidewalks and physical egress access improvements with the new curb cut. The next criteria is the visual character of the neighborhood, which we suggest will be improved with the substantial streetscape and buffer and design improvements that are proposed. The next criteria is the environment, which will be also improved with reduced wastewater flows, elimination of the cesspool, new stormwater design, and hook up to the municipal sewer system once it is in this area, which we anticipate will probably be about a year after the facility is open. There is adequate utilities and public services for this use. There is an existing water service that will be used for the new facility and connection to the municipal sewer system. And then finally, the property is not within the groundwater protection district. Notwithstanding with the new stormwater improvements, it will improve the quality of drainage and runoff that is going into the ground. So on balance, we suggest that this redevelopment will not be substantially detrimental to the established character of the neighborhood. And finally, the last comment that I wanted to make is that we have spoken with several of the abutters who have reached out, including Nauset Fish Market and Nauset Marine, both of whom I believe are represented on this hearing. I did want to note, looking at the plan, that we are showing on our plan, while the curb cut to the fish market is changing, we are showing on our proposed plan extending the radius for the relocated curb cut, the revised curb cut, in front of our property by an additional almost 10 feet. And that's something that we're proposing as part of this plan as an accommodation to the fish market and the changes that are proposed to that curb cut. So I think rather than go into the variance, maybe I'll just pause at the special permits and see if the board has any questions of me or our team, all of whom are here. And then hold off on the variance to see if we actually need to go there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Members of the board, although the way that the permitting process just presented really described through permitting steps, I'm looking for your guidance, but I suggest that we consider this as the permitting as a single unit, even though there are many different reasons. The change of use, for example, will be governed by 16438 of our bylaw, where there'll be separate findings which would satisfy the criteria set forth in that section. And then for the, we'll call it the buffer permitting, we would use, as we have generally, 16444 to, and those criteria as Ms. Cox just included, going through those reasons. So that's my thinking. In other words, we'll keep this application holistically. Any comments, members? Very well. Then I'll ask whether any members of the board have any questions questions to ask Ms. Cox or any of the applicants' agents.
I'll ask a couple of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh.
You basically have stated that the building you think will not require its own septic system in as much it should be finished after the town sewers are activated and you collect directly into the town sewer system.
So we are proposing a new Title V septic system that will probably be in place for about 1 year until the sewer is available in front of the property.
It'll be a typical Title V, not an A&I that's unique, is what you propose.
That's correct. We will, as I mentioned, substantially be reducing the amount of flows coming out of this site in that period, and then connecting to the municipal sewer.
So I presume then that the Board of Health will be involved in, and I'm not sure there will be, but whatever hazardous wastes might be generated in a medical facility.
Yep. So the Cape Cod Healthcare has very stringent policies regarding hazardous waste. I can ask Michael Bachstein, who I see on here, although he's muted, to walk you through those if that's helpful for you. But yes, those will be carefully regulated. Nothing gets flushed down the toilet with Cape Cod Healthcare. They have very stringent policies.
Okay. I'm also concerned somewhat, and I think it's been addressed by others. The ambulances, they will go to the back of the building. I'm not sure how many there will be, but taking a look at it, I had some difficulty understanding that where they would go, because I think at the same spot there are handicap parking spaces close to where the entrance would be, or I think the ambulances. Is that a problem?
Dan, do you want to jump in on that? I'll pull the plan up for you.
Sure. My name is Dan Ogil. I'm a civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouthport. Yeah, I don't think, the short answer is no, I don't think it'll be a problem. It should work fairly well. The setup is that whole striped area there is going to be available for them. So basically they'd pull straight in ahead right up to the light pole at the end and unload, and then they'd wheel right up the sidewalk there. So that whole end, which is in excess of 20 feet plus additional length for the truck to pull in, gives them quite a bit of room to maneuver there. The sidewalk is just flush. There's no reveal. So if they are, wheelchair or dolly, they can simply slide right through that area. So we feel it's pretty well configured in that manner. We wouldn't expect them to come under the canopy in the front, although, they could if it was just a casual drop off, but they'd pull around there, and there's a good turning movement where they can swing into that double bay and then pull back out. So, obviously if we had twice the size of the site, it would make a big loop, but this I think will function well.
Okay. The other question ties into that. I'm not sure about traffic studies. Sometimes they go on averages based on what's currently available. What I'm concerned about with respect to the question is that certainly in the summertime, as we get many more people on Cape, and sometimes specifically on weekends where there's much more people on Cape, that might be more the point where people would be needing urgent care, and combining with that traffic with what you consider to be normal. Has that been anticipated so that one can say we don't anticipate additional traffic congestions due to the fact that we have seasonal issues? here on Cape.
Yeah, let me ask Randy Hart from VHB. I don't see him on this screen, although he is in the attendees list. If he could respond to that. He's our transportation engineer. There we go.
Sorry, my screen froze. I did not hear the question. Would you mind repeating it?
Okay, I'll try.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
What my concern is that your traffic studies are normally based on averages throughout the year. During the peak season on Cape, we get a lot more people who are more likely to use urgent health care, specifically on weekends. That combined with ambulances could cause somewhat traffic congestion. And the reason why I say that is quite often, unfortunately, I've had to go to Fontaine on weekends because that's where the visitors come. So I'm sensing that there could be an increased traffic flow due to seasonal work, people here on the Cape. Has that been factored into your determination that basically says that it is not a problem?
Very, very good question. And the answer is yes, it has been factored in. The data that we utilized for both the restaurant and for the medical office building is based on, sort of more normalized communities, off Cape, for instance, where normal activities would be what our peak summer activity is here. So, and it's a wide variety of data points that were utilized from many, many locations. So we absolutely look at peak summer conditions. That's what we look for when we do work on Cape Cod, and that was considered here as well.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Ms. Cox, how many employees do you expect to be on site?
Yeah, Mike, do you want to jump in on that? We're anticipating 4 to 5 full-time equivalent physicians, but I think your question is employees on like a peak shift. Is that what you're asking?
No, I wasn't really thinking of that. I'm just wondering how many parking spaces you'd have to back out of the 42 available to service the people who were there all day. That's what I was.
Mike Bockstein, can you jump in on the number of employees?
Yep, I'm unmuted now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So on the primary care side and in the urgent care side, I would say approximately somewhere around maybe 12 to 14 employees that we'll have on site during those probably peak times. And sometimes it might be less. I would say that with the new healthcare that we have, with Zoom appointments, which I will probably consider will continue for a long time. We have a lot less parking requirements at our facilities across the system that we've seen at all of our primary care physician sites. And that's a good thing for everybody because it increases the access. It decreases the amount of automobile traffic on the sites and congestion, and makes obviously the access to our Cape Codders much easier. But reluctantly, even on the back side of that, even if we saw our full staffing out there, so if we see approximately 12 people or so with our physician and some of our nurses and our urgent care folks and those seasonal upflixes, even during, let's say, peaks where you have a shift change, which isn't like the hospital where we have the 7 to 3, 3 to 11 and the evening shift changes. We won't be really impacting, we believe, those spaces too much, so that we always, at all of our sites, want to make sure that our patients have adequate parking in advance, even at all of our peak times.
Let me also ask if I can, Randy Hart, to respond to that. This question came up at site plan review as well, between the preliminary and final site plan review. And so he actually did a parking study that is attached to the materials that we submitted, that look at the parking. We meet the bylaws requirements, but look at really the parking in terms of, is it adequate, notwithstanding compliance with the bylaw, based on Cape Cod Healthcare's experience in other locations. And Randy, do you want to give us your findings?
Yeah, sure. So we looked at the Falmouth location, Strawberry Hill, and Fontaine and Harwich, and they each had really varying parking ratios. Falmouth had a ratio of 1.9 spaces per 1,000 feet. Strawberry Hill about 4 spaces per thousand, and Fontaine at 5.3. But when we compare that to what we're doing here, we're showing a parking ratio of 6.17 spaces per thousand. So we're, pretty within the range, but on the high end of the range for the typical type of locations.
Oh, Ms. Ucko.
Yeah. Question about potential specialty services. And in part, this is just curiosity. And in part, I wonder if the use of the building, how it might evolve over time. And so can you say a bit more about the kind of specialty services that might be provided in the future?
Mike, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so it's Mike Boxline again. So, we will primarily have our primary care physician there. That's something that everybody seeks to have access to. But there are times where you might bring a specialty service in that might rotate in a day. Let's say a cardiologist, or you may have ENT or a podiatrist, or maybe a rehab specialist or something like that, or that sort of physician that meets the need of the area. So we may rotate that from, let's say, over at the Fontaine site. And then we might rotate them down there to meet clients there or meet the needs in the Orleans area. So it's a varying range, but we see that growing, over time, or changing or evolving as the needs of the community is that needs to be met. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, you don't see much change in terms of the types of procedures that would be performed there? It mostly be specialty consultation?
Yes, I wouldn't see much like you have at a surgical practice where you have special procedures and things done. We're not really planning on doing that there. I'm not saying that might not evolve over time, or if the need is there for some reason, if we can accommodate it at that site. But as you see at all of our sites, we focus on the needs of the community, and we're never shy to change to meet those needs if we can make sure that the site meets the needs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think that even though the final location of the curb cut are unsettled until you make peace with the Department of Transportation, that we really need to insert a condition in should we decide to permit their application. That's my thinking. I don't. I'll solicit any comments from the board members, but it seems to me you have that pretty much under control. That is, at least to say, the westerly, the only curb cut, which is on the westerly side of the property you propose to purchase. Now, you mentioned something, Ms. Fox, about the Nauset Fish Surf Crickets curb cut. How long ago was that the configuration of that curb cut changed?
It's been part of the site plan that we filed with the zoning board.
Oh, all right. Well, the reason I say that is because I have a letter from Ronald Harrison, who runs Nauset Fish and Surf Crickets. Been there years and years and years. And I don't know if Mr. Harrison is present tonight, but he did submit a letter of comment to the zoning board, which which the board secretary circulated to the members.
So I actually spoke with his attorney maybe even an hour before tonight's hearing, Attorney David Reed, who I believe is here this evening.
Well, in that case, I'll wait to hear Mr. Harrison. Okay. And you can comment. Are there any other questions by any members of the board of the Cape Cod Healthcare Group? Very well. Then I'm asking for any public comment in opposition to this application.
Hey, Mike, I have David Wright had a hand raised, so I gave him the ability to talk.
Good.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Reed, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for
Your
allowing
name
us to
was,
speak.
I think your name was just mentioned.
Yes, it was. And thank you. Yes, I represent Ronald Harrison of Nauset Fish and Lobster. As you noted, he wrote a letter to you a week or so ago about his concerns for the impact that this could have on his business, principally related to access and visibility. Since that time, I've had a meeting with Attorney Cox and with the project engineer, Mr. Ojala, and we've discussed various site features, and I've conferred with Mr. Harrison, and as a result of those conversations, as Ms. Cox indicated, continuing over the last week and up to about an hour ago, one of his first and prominent concerns was that for the last 55 years, they have shared a common curb cut that enters both the Lobster Claw and the Nauset Fish and Lobster, and splits in both directions. The current proposal is to eliminate that on the Lobster Claw side, but that would significantly reduce our singular access from the public way. The applicants have noted that the resulting curb cut between our sign and landscaping area and the property line would be just over 30 feet in width, but that they are willing to allow the radius or flare, if you will, to the south to extend in front of their property to allow us the maximum turning radius, since that is both an in and out way for us, which would extend the effective width of our access to 39.9 feet, I believe is the correct number. Now that is a significant reduction. We're not asking you to increase it to that, because I know the 30 foot is the standard, but we're asking that it be reduced only to as much as is presently shown on that plan to allow us the maximum entrance and exit for that very tight site. In addition to that, we've discussed with them and they've agreed that the landscaping in the vicinity of that curb cut, the front yard and the right side of that corner of the building, would remain as grass or very low-lying vegetation, not trees or bushes that could obstruct visibility for vehicles either entering or exiting our site. And that's also appreciated. And lastly, it was pointed out to us that there is a fenced-in storage area toward the rear of Mr. Harrison's facility, which actually encroaches onto their property at one corner. They've agreed quite graciously to allow that to remain for as long as Mr. Harrison needs it and continues to operate his business, even though it's encroaching onto their property. It's a rather passive storage area fenced with a stockade fence. It's for pallets and things like that, and they're stored for a temporary basis next to his cooler and side entrance of his property. Mr. Harrison appreciates those concessions and the willingness of Cape Cod Healthcare to work with him and address his concerns. And on that basis, with their agreement and with your concurrence on those items, he would not oppose this project. He would withdraw his letter to the extent that it's read as a letter of opposition.
Very well. Well, I've accepted the letter for the file, but I wonder whether the accommodations which Mr. Harrison through you and Cape Cod Healthcare have made can be done privately, or whether there's a compelling need for this board to attach conditions to any permit.
I would think that the location and size and orientation of the curb cut is a matter that's part of your approval, should you seek to do so. because it is part of the plan that you will incorporate into your decision. I think the recitation about the plantings to the front and side of the property near the curb cut, while not expressly referenced, they are shown as a grassed area and there is no higher vegetation shown. So I would think, again, the incorporation of your plan would be sufficient for that purpose.
All right.
The matter of the fenced-in area is really a private matter and not a matter of zoning, and they've agreed to that, and we'll accept their word on that.
That was my thinking too, subject to any comment by any of my colleagues. However, Ms. Fox, I'm looking at the site plan that you referred to, drawn by Down Cape Engineering, and it's dated December 8th, 2020. So I suspect that I'm not looking at the most recently revised. Oh, but you say it was at the site plan review. That plan that Mr. Reed is satisfied with.
It's the one that you just mentioned. It's the one dated December 8th. That is the one.
This is acceptable. This will provide the curb cut that Mr. Harrison will be able to accept.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, because we know that once a permit is issued, this is engraved, this site plan's engraved in stone. And we're all, so that means we're all talking about the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
But-
we would expect
right.
it would be a condition, the site plan, a condition of any approval.
Well, it actually isn't really a condition. We refer to it as incorporated as basis of our findings. Generally, that's the way we work it.
Okay, that's fine.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Now, is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this application?
I do not see any more hands raised.
Very well. Any further questions by any members of the board?
Chairman, this is not in the way of a question, but the last reference to a private understanding about the encroachment, I just encourage the secretary to include reference to that in our minutes. Thank you.
Very well, Mr. Clark. It does show on the plan. I think the plan was the December 8th.
Good enough. Thank
2020
you.
Plan does show the encroachments, though. It was quite thorough, I would say. I mean, I could see it anyway. Did you see it, Mr.
Good enough for
Clark?
me.
Okay. Then I'll close the hearing for the taking of evidence and ask for the sense of the board. This is speaking for myself. We've spent some time talking about landscaping and buffers. We have a fine plan showing the architectural detail, and someone could conceive that the architectural features are consistent with the town and certainly the neighboring uses. But the fact of the matter is, the use itself, a medical facility right downtown Orleans, is just a completely salutary result and event. And I applaud Cape Cod Healthcare for the work and accommodations that you've made to the neighbors and to the town to cite such an important use where everyone can see it. It says a lot for Cape Cod Healthcare, which I think is the largest employer on the Cape, and it says a lot for what you bring to the town of Orleans. So there isn't probably any of us who haven't been to Fontaine or Hyannis to be treated, and to have this facility right downtown is absolutely magnificent. And
Hey, Mike, it's Sarah.
yes,
I have a Ben Zender who has raised his hand asking if he could speak.
Yes. Mr. Zender,
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Zender, you're on mute.
Can you all hear me okay now?
yes.
Oh, great. Mr. Marnick, I was waiting for you to ask if anybody who was not in opposition wanted to speak to this project.
I didn't do it quite like that. And now I suppose you have any public comment.
Yeah,
And
well,
that
thank
includes
you.
you.
And good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Ben Zender, and I'm here on behalf of Nauset Marine, who is the owner of the property directly across the street. And Todd Walker of Nauset Marine is on the line as well. Looking at the site plan, the board, I think, is aware that there's an easement on the south side of the property that extends out to the Cranberry Highway, and it's 20 feet in width at its intersection with the Cranberry Highway. The plan that's presented is seeking to reroute the traffic into that easement onto the subject property and then back into the easement. And I'd like to report to the board that we've had very productive conversations with Attorney Cox about routing Nauset Marine's easement traffic over the Cape Cod Healthcare property back into the easement area, but we have not reduced that to an agreement as of this date. So while we're in support of the project as presented in all aspects, we are going to need to, get that issue resolved. And if we can't, then it might have an impact on the ultimate design of at least the southerly curb cut. So I just like the board to be aware of that dynamic at this point. And thank you.
So it would go along the easement which Ms. Cox attached in the application, and then there's additional easement that looks like it's registered land. Is that what you're referring to? And that's how Nauset Marine wraps around into the boat storage area?
Yes, the Nauset Marine easement, it comes off of Route 6A at the southerly boundary line of the property for 20 feet in width. It expands to 40 feet in width, and then it wraps around the back of the property and comes back up to the Cranberry Highway a little further to the north. But our immediate concern really only is if the applicant is going to landscape the far southerly side of this easement area and create a single curb cut into and out of the property at the south side, that Nauset Marine's easement rights be protected and that they be able to acquire an easement from Cape Cod Healthcare should they acquire the property to pass over their property into the easement area. And I have to say, personally, I think we'll probably be able to do that.
It didn't appear, Mr. Zender, that easement would be jeopardized by the landscape. No trees on that area.
No, Mr. Chairman, there are no trees proposed. As Attorney Zender said, we are in conversation with him and regarding this question that he's raised. His client has a couple of lots. The lot which has the boat storage, which directly abuts this property, has easement rights to pass and repass over the easement, similar to the rights that we have. In fact, I think they're probably hard to get to because there's a wetland that is intervening between where the boat storage area is and this easement. That said, we are working with them. We don't have an agreement yet, but we've been discussing concepts to include in an agreement, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to reach it. But I view this as a title matter and not a zoning matter.
Very well.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mulligan,
May I ask how many people have easement rights on from the Cranberry Highway to the end of your property?
So where my firm didn't do the title, we have asked for clarity on that. We believe it's just our property and lot 6, the boat storage property that's owned by Nauset Marine.
And Stop and Shop, of course.
They own that, right?
But there are gas lines going down there, it appears. So
they're the fee owners, yep.
So there's a gas easement anyway.
Right. I know that right of way is part of the Stop and Shop property, so they are the actual owners of the land. This property has easement rights over it, as does the boat storage lot that's owned by Nauset Marine.
Thank you.
very well. Any other comments Now that I think everyone has had a chance to speak, except you, my colleagues. Um, then I will designate, Mr. Cole, are you able to consider this?
I need to recuse on this.
Okay, then the following members will decide this application: myself, Ms. Eckel, Mr. Waugh, Mr. Taub, and Mr. Mulligan. And I asked if any named member has had any communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents concerning this application, which ought to be disclosed to the public or which would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest. There's no positive response. Therefore, I declare the 5 named members impartial and indifferent. Now, then we will entertain, or I will move to issue a special permit based upon the documents and application materials provided.
I'll
Is there-
second, I'll second the
Second by
motion.
Mr. Mulligan. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could I just use this as an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to understand the variance portion as distinct from the special permit portion? I understood the special permit portion. I was a little lost at the variance, and no ways opposing it. I just like clarification, sir.
Very well. As Ms. Fox was eloquently described the situation, that is, the prayer or request for a variance was in the alternative, insofar as if the board in its has determined or decided that special permit was not, relief could not be granted by means of a special permit, then the applicant wanted to use the criteria for variance and obtain relief that way. If the special permit is granted, then the applicant will withdraw the request for a variance without prejudice. Does that explain the situation, Mr. Dobb? I can't tell if Mr. Todd heard my description, or is with us. I see he's in attendance. Mr. Todd? Mr. Todd has left the meeting for unexplained reasons. So, Ms. Clark, there is a motion which has been seconded. I was about to call for a vote. In fairness, I'm advising you that you need 4 votes. Right now, Mr. Taub is back in. Mr. Taub, are you present?
You know, I keep the visual off because the internet connection is so unstable. So I missed all the lovely explanation to the question I asked. But yes, I'm present. Thank you.
I'll try to give the executive summary, and that is.
No, it's not necessary. So we'll take it up at another time. Thank you.
Very well. Then we have 5 members ready to vote, and we'll call a roll call vote. Mr. Marner, yes. Ms. Eckholt,
Yes.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes,
and Mr. Todd.
Yes, sir.
And the motion carries unanimously. So we will grant your request, a routine request for withdrawal of the application for a variance without prejudice.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear, the motion and the vote was to approve both special permits. Is that correct? That was just made.
Treating as it, but we've decided, I ruled that we're going to treat it.
Bring them together.
Now, what you may do is through the board secretary would be an appropriate way of doing this. I would like your summary submitted with your application in electronic form.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. Okay. I just wanted to, before I asked to withdraw the variance request, I just wanted to confirm that that vote was on the entirety of the two special permit applications.
Yes, I understand the way that you approached it, but
Yes.
I think it's a lot neater this way, not having it bifurcated.
I'm fine with that.
All right.
So I would ask the board to allow us to withdraw without prejudice the variance application that was submitted.
I'll make the motion to
Very
accept.
well. And a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion, sir.
And any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Mr. Marnick, yes. Ms. Echo,
Yes.
Mr. Waugh. Mr. Waugh,
You didn't hear me? Yes.
yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Mulligan
Yes,
and Mr. Tom.
Yes.
Very well. Motion carries unanimously. Your request to withdraw the application for variance is withdrawn without prejudice.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Attorney Reed and Attorney Zender for working with us on this matter as well. We appreciate the board's time and input tonight and the positive relief. Thank you.
Thank you from Cape Cod Healthcare. It's Mike Bockstein. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good. Members of the board, we have another application. And it is case number 2148. Now, this is made by Eastwood Companies on behalf of Michael Stack and Catherine Stack for an application for a special permit that's set forth in chapter 48, section 164. So under general laws, chapter 48, and under a bylaw section 164.21, the schedule of a lot, yard, and bulk requirements, note number 5. But simply, it's the building coverage in a residential district that proposes will exceed 4,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to add a barn or garage addition to the property located at 101 Gibson Road, map number 11, parcel 52/53. If any member of the board had any communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents, which would ought to be disclosed to the public or would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest? I see no positive response. Therefore, I declare that the members of the board are indifferent and impartial. Ms. Ledoux, are you presenting?
I am. I didn't know if you were finished.
I am, and let's hear from you.
All right, sure. Susan Ledoux from Eastward Companies. Good evening. I'm I'm from Eastward Companies, and I'm representing Michael and Catherine Stack, who purchased the property at 101 Gibson Road from Eastward Companies in early 2020. If you are familiar with the property at all, there were approximately 4 structures on the site when we bought it a few years ago. And we took down the old house and some older outbuildings, left the cottage on the site and built a new home. And the Stacks purchased that property from us early 2020. They lived there full time at 101 Gibson Road. And they are requesting a special permit to exceed the 4,000 square foot building coverage to construct the proposed barn garage on the site between the existing home and the cottage. And if you have the site plan in front of you, you'll see that there's the house, there's the cottage. And I've also submitted photos of the existing site and structures on the site. And it's a large lot. It's 51,810 square feet. And it's located at the corner of Gibson Road and Hidden Valley Road, which is a dirt or gravel road off of Gibson Road. The existing building coverage on the site is 3,700 square feet or 7.1%. The Stacks are proposing to construct a 912 square foot, approximately 24 by 38, 1.5 story barn garage, and it will be just under 22 feet high at its ridge on the lot. This will put the proposed building coverage at 4,615 square feet, which, although it is above the 4,000, it is well below the maximum of the 15% at 8.9% building coverage. And as you can see, if you've got the building plans in front of you, it's a typical Pine Harbor Wood Products barn structure. It's very attractive in character, using a post and beam construction. It has 2 garage doors and a loft. And this building will have no conditioned space, will not be insulated, no living space or a bathroom. It will be used for indoor storage of overflow vehicles, kayaks, furniture from the patio, and from around a future pool on the site, and any garden tools that are used in the yard. And it will be accessed from Hidden Valley Road. I'm going to go through the special permit criteria that we submitted. Adequacy of the site. The subject lot is 1.19 acres, 51,810 square feet in size, all buildable upland. The existing house and cottage plus the proposed barn at 4,615 square feet building coverage will be 8.9% building coverage, well below the 15% maximum. The suitability of the site is suitable because it's a large lot with 51,810 square feet of buildable upland, and the proposed barn will be equidistant from the house and the cottage that are on the site. Impact of traffic flow and safety. This will be a 2-stall barn garage structure used for the storage of extra vehicles and parking for family / overflow guests and storage of items that I mentioned earlier. Its access will be located off of Hidden Valley Road and will contribute minimally to the traffic flow in this area. So we see it as very little impact on the traffic flow. The impact on neighborhood visual character. The subject lot is at the corner of Gibson Road and Hidden Valley Road. And the barn or garage will only be seen by vehicles driving along Hidden Valley Road and possibly 2 abutters, maybe 3 during the winter months across Hidden Valley Road. The design, again, is a salt box style and should have a positive impact on visual character of the neighborhood. Adequacy of method of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage. This should have no impact on the areas as it will have no bathroom and all storm water will continue to be contained on site. Adequacy of utilities and public services. All utilities and public services will be adequate to serve the proposed barn garage. And we see it really only having maybe some electrical wiring for a light and to operate the garage doors. Noise and litter. There will be very little to no noise and litter produced by the proposed barn garage. And impact of groundwater quality, recharge volume, water quality of coastal and freshwater bodies. The proposed structure is not located near a water body and will have little to no impact on these resources. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Ledoux, where is Finch Lane? How far away is Finch Lane from the locus?
I'm sorry?
How far away is Finch Lane?
It's across Gibson Road. It's a little, I want to say cul-de-sac. It's to the, if you're looking at Gibson Road, the site plan, it's just to the northeast and across Gibson.
I have an email from Susan Bird, also in which Rachel Powell and Kevin Flynn join her in objecting to the Stack's application. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you?
I have. I've read their correspondence.
What do you say to that? You're going from 3,700 square feet to 4,600 square feet, and maybe you have an explanation, or have you or anyone on behalf of Eastward talked with these folks?
No, and this was I saw this before the meeting tonight, so I did not know that they had any issues until this evening. So no, I have not talked with them. To answer, again, we feel that it's a large site. It's not an overburdening of the site or an overburdening of the neighborhood to add the structure in the center of the property to use for storage. And again, it's well below the 15% maximum at 8.9%. So we really don't see it as being a negative to the property or the neighborhood.
It's difficult to assess the percentage of objection or gravity, but there are a lot of folks who ask that very same question that Ms. Berg asked. Why does Orleans have residential property restrictions, mainly the 4,000 square feet, if they're exceeded for no real reason other than the property owner doesn't want to be restricted? I'm not sure that the comment that the house could have been small to accommodate the garage, because the garage made the decision, the garage could have been made later on, and maybe that's probably what happened. But it's starting to be kind of there's a lot of applications coming in here, Mr. Blue, and we're some of us might be troubled by that. And I know it's a very large lot. I also know that Mr. Karakayan, who has a home right across the street at Howard Gibson Road, thinks this is a great idea, and that the garage fits in perfectly. So, and requests that the application be approved. But I needed your comment. The board really needs some help here. I don't see where there's anyone else in attendance at the meeting to object, but I wanted to honor Ms. Berg's, what appears to be Ms. Berg's objection. And it's difficult.
I understand.
Any other questions by any other members of the board?
No, but I would like to comment to that particular question, because I think we do go over it periodically. And my opinion is we have the 4,000 square foot requirement, but we also understand that because of the Zoning Board of Appeals, one can extend that. There are other things that control it. I think I forget exactly what the maximum coverage on a particular lot is, but if you have 4,000 square foot, your house exceeds it, and then you are still are allowed to have a special permit for that, providing you don't exceed the maximum coverage, because then you get into a variance.
Yes.
Which I think is key. So we have done this before, and I think at times it is a matter of the view of the people that are looking at it, as we had a case a little while ago that was withdrawn. And I think the same logic applied there. I did look at this property, and I could not see where a barn in the back would be a hardship to anybody driving by. So I think the misconception by the people that wrote this, I couldn't quite read the letter, but it was something to the effect of, why do we violate all the town requirements? And my answer is, we're not. We're actually complying with the town requirements. You can do this with a permit. That's what the town voters have put into our zoning bylaws. So I think that's the best answer I'd give them. There's no violation, and they're a minority, and maybe they don't like it. How bad don't they like it? I don't know.
Well,
I'm looking
well,
at things like this.
well, your explanation, George, is that it's contextual. So here, although we exceed the 4,000 square feet by some, maybe 18, 19%, the building coverage as a percentage relative to the size of the lot only becomes 8.9%, where you're allowed to have 15%.
Right.
And your point is that when you go over the 15%, now you've got a real problem, and you're ignoring the context of the coverages. And it doesn't appear that there's been any willful action to here to cause violence to the zoning regulations. Any other comments?
You said it better than I did.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to do that, George, but I'm trying to answer my own question, and so that we have a framework of dealing with this rather than looking at Ms. Berg's question, which is quite blunt, and to that extent, it would be troubling. Any other comment by any members of the board? Anyone present wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone present wishing to provide public comment to the application? Then I will close the meeting for the taking of evidence and ask for the sense of the board. Deciding this will be myself, Ms. Eckholt, Mr. Mulligan, Mr. Waugh, and Mr. Cole.
I'll move to grant the special permit, Mr. Chairman.
Very well.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cole. Is there any comment or discussion on the motion? Then we'll poll the board with a vote. Yes, it is in favor of a special permit. Mr. Marnick, yes. Ms. Eckholt?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Waugh?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
And Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Very well. Then I will write the decision. Thank you, Ms. Ledoux.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Sarah, is there anyone else out there who wishing to, it appears to have wish to speak with the board?
There is nobody else.
Very well. All right. There's no further business. However, except some serious housekeeping. We went. I'm thinking now that we need to have a special and relatively brief meeting of the board to discuss succession. Tom?
Yeah, I don't think I should be part of this discussion, so if you don't mind, I'll.
Very well. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Very well.
Hey, Tom.
We did not last year have an election of officers, of chair and board secretary, and I think we ought to look at the terms of the board and determine what the sense of the board is and the positions that should be taken for the remaining terms, such as mine. I've been chair now for a long time, and we had difficulty in 2020 in processing the board's business. I would like to have a special meeting to review and once and for all to accept and approve the form of the several minutes of many meetings once and for all, that we can have a good record of the business of the board of in the year 2020 and now, and to without, we can have an election or not, but we ought to have an idea as to who what people's intention are concerning their incumbency on the board, renewing their position, and who ought to be enlisted to become my successor. This is not a letter of resignation. I'm stating it a lot more bluntly now than I did before, but that's my thinking. We could have a special meeting. I ask for the sense of the board as to whether we could do that, say, next Wednesday.
I could do it next Wednesday.
I believe I can too.
Good.
Yes.
George, if good, and we'll see if we can bring Emily into the fold. I think we could probably do that kind of business in a half hour or 40 minutes or so. I will circulate draft minutes myself between now and next Wednesday for review. I will also have the decisions, which for the past year, some of which have been filed, and some of which I'll file this week, so that you'll have a record of a good record of the business that we've done in the late 2019 until the present. And then we can see what sense of the board is towards continuing to do business in the form that we have been doing it, or whether it ought to be changed. That's my thinking. And if we could do that, that would be great.
Prior to that meeting, is it possible that the secretary send out a list of the members and the expiration dates that they have, and also what their titles are? I mean, I don't even know if I'm a member or an alternate, so.
You know, and I've forgotten,
But yeah, I don't either, so don't.
I think now, Matt Cole's been on the board as long as I am, but I think that he's an associate member now because he stepped down to allow Emily to become the secretary.
The website lists Emily, Jerry, and Bruce as regular members, myself, George, and Lynn as associate. That's how the website reads.
And I have no idea what an associate is versus a regular member, but you can tell me next week, not now.
Very well. We really don't discriminate between regular members and associate members, Lynn, but very well. Then we'll have a meeting at 7 o'clock next Wednesday and see if we can iron all that out. And that would be wonderful. I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, we can adjourn. We need a motion.
Can I just say before we do that, I always appreciate the fabulous tech support we get on these calls.
Oh, isn't that true?
Happy to help.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, we're talking 7 o'clock next Wednesday.
7 o'clock, if that's good for everyone.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Thank
you. A motion to adjourn was made by.
So moved.
by
A
Mr.
second.
Cole.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for all your help. This was a good night.
Good night.
Take care.
If Stacy's gonna make the packets for us, maybe she should include copies of the decisions that we are talking about that we will approve.
That I will do because I'm the custodian